Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharini Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Salutations to the King of Ascetics, the sage Vivekananda, who was the embodiment of existence, knowledge, bliss absolute, who removes all our sorrows and is established in the cell. Om peace, peace, peace be unto all. So good evening, everybody. Looks like there is some feedback with the mic. Sure.
Swami Nirakarananda became interested in Vedanta during his student days in Argentina. In 1993, he joined the Ramakrishna order at the Ramakrishna Vedanta Center at Bourne in the UK. He spent the early years of his monastic life in England and also India, and received his monastic vow in 2006. The Swami had been a resident monk at the Vedanta Society of St. Louis in 2007, and this is his third visit to our center. 2 years ago, he came for primary therapy, and last before for 5 years when Swami Amma was on the. So we welcome you back.
Thank you
So much that you could help us out here.
Sure. I'm very happy to be back and spend a couple of days with you all. So our subject for this evening's talk is the wisdom of turning around. You can't hear? Sure. Okay. Okay. Let me know if. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, let me know if. Is that okay now? All right. So the wisdom of turning around, and we are celebrating Swamiji's birthday anniversary tomorrow. So can anybody guess what the talk is about? I mean, the title doesn't say much, but it's possible to guess if you try hard. So they remember the incident in Swamiji's life? Probably the best known incident, when the monkeys chased him. So we are going to talk about that incident. So Swamiji turned around and faced them. So I was thinking, I was thinking we could call it Face the Brutes, but it sounds too harsh for a title, Face the Brutes. So after Sri Ramakrishna's passing, the young disciples gathered at the Baranagore Math. They established the Baranagore Math, and they started living there, more or less it's from September 1886. And they started to go on pilgrimages here and there as wandering monks. They wanted to experience a life of complete dependence on the divine and practicing austerities and all that. So Swami Vivekananda's first known pilgrimage from the Baranagore Math is in about August 1888, about 2 years later. So he went to Varanasi with Swami Premananda, and another lay disciple. And they visited Sarnath, where Buddha gave the first sermon, and then the temple of Lord Vishwanath, Mother Annapurna, and Mother Durga also, which is also known as the monkey temple. So there you will find lots of monkeys, even today. And so what happened there, we will see what Swamiji himself narrated when he was in Chicago in 1893. He tells the story himself. He says, once when I was in Varanasi, I was passing through a place where there was a large tank of water on one side and a high wall on the other. There were many monkeys. The monkeys of Varanasi are huge brutes and are sometimes surly. So they say they're kind of large and they have sharp teeth. So you don't want to get in trouble with a troop of monkeys of that type, langur monkeys. So they now took it into their heads not to allow me to pass through their street. So they howled and shrieked and clutched at my feet as I passed. As they pressed closer, I began to run. But the faster I ran, the faster came the monkeys, and they began to bite at me. It seemed impossible to escape. But just then I met a stranger who called out to me, "Face the brutes." I turned and faced the monkeys, and they fell back and finally fled. So this is the incident in Swamiji's life, as told by himself. You can imagine the situation. He is running away from them, and then he hears this call from somebody that faced them. He turns around and faces them. But at that point, he doesn't know whether it will work or not. We know the end of the story. He doesn't. He just turns around and faces them, and whatever happens, happens. They could have attacked him and, just piled on him. But no, they fled. So you can imagine that Swamiji was probably fairly surprised when that happened. He turns around, the monkeys stop, and they disperse. So what has changed? He's the same Swamiji who was running away. He has no weapons. He is the same person. The only thing that has changed is the attitude. He was running away, and they were chasing him. Then he turned around and faced them, and they dispersed. Same monkeys. The monkeys haven't changed. Swamiji hasn't changed. But however, there's a huge change. What is that? The attitude. Swamiji's attitude, from running away to facing them. That's what made all the difference. So Swamiji, he learned a big lesson from this incident. He explained himself. He said, that is a lesson for all life. Face the terrible. Face it boldly. Like the monkeys, the hardships of life fall back when we cease to flee before them. If we are ever to gain freedom, it must be by conquering nature, never by running away. Cowards never win victories. And then he makes a statement that will be the main subject of our talk. He says, we have to fight fear and troubles and ignorance if we expect them to flee before us. So that is Swamiji's teaching, that we have to face these three: fears, troubles, and ignorance. Now, there is another incident in Swamiji's life. It happened in England in 1895. And he could put this lesson to the test. He was walking across some fields with two devotees, and suddenly out of nowhere, a bull comes charging at them. So one of the devotees noticed this, and he ran to safety. There was another lady devotee, and she fell down and couldn't get up in time. Swamiji is just observing this. He cannot help her. So what does he do? He decides to stand between the bull and the fallen devotee. And he crosses his arms and was looking at the bull and trying to figure out how far he would be thrown by the bull. But then the bull stopped and retreated. Now, Swamiji is not asking us to do the same. He's not telling us to be reckless, but he's telling us to be fearless. There is a difference between being fearless and being reckless. You can be fearless and yet rationally careful. So, Swamiji says we have to fight our fear and troubles and ignorance. Let's start with fear. How to fight our fears? And what kind of fears do we have? There is a well-known Sanskrit composition called Vairagya Shatakam. Swami Vivekananda himself quotes this work. So there, Bhartrihari, in one verse, he tells he enumerates all the types of fear that we suffer from. So he says, in pleasure, there is the fear of disease. How? Well, it's very easy. We like to eat, say for instance, we like to eat sweets. But then, if we eat too much, we begin to get afraid. Oh, I'll get sick. So there is always this compromise between enjoyment or pleasure and disease. We know if we go too far, we'll get a disease. So that is probably the only thing that's holding us back, that we'll get sick. So Bhartrihari says, in pleasure, in enjoyment, there is the fear of disease. In social position, there is the fear of scandal. Now, as a regular person, you have your own little life. We all do. We do our work. We are anonymous people. But the higher you go in social position, the more famous you are, the more is at stake. If something comes out that is embarrassing, that person's life is over. So there will always be a threat that, everything should be fine. When you look at the celebrities, their lives are perfect. And they try their best to keep it that way, to show that appearance. So in social position, there is the fear of scandal. Then in wealth, there is the fear of kings. In the old days, if the king was displeased with you, he can take everything away from you. So the wealthy people, influential people, they were afraid of the king. Now you can say there is a fear of hackers and scammers. That they can drain your bank account. So in wealth, there's the fear of losing it. In honor, there's the fear of humiliation. In the old days, if somebody humiliated somebody, they would go to a duel, and they're willing to die. It's better to die than to live in dishonor. So in honor, there's the fear of humiliation. In power, there's the fear of enemies. Again, this is very easy to understand. We have our little lives. We don't have many enemies because maybe we don't have any enemies. We just, regular people doing regular things. But if you are the CEO of a multinational, you are bound to have enemies. There's no way out. The more power you have, the more people will want to be in your position. Whether you like it or not, however nice you may be, where there is power, there is enemies. You can't get away from it. So in power, there's the fear of enemies. Then in beauty, there is the fear of old age. Again, the more a person is attached to their physical appearance, the more will be dreading death or old age, because that will be lost. But you can be a very beautiful person, so long as you are not bothered. You don't put too much stress on that. You're not attached to that. It's okay. Old age will come, and my beauty will go away, and I'm okay with that. But all this modern industry that has sprung up from cosmetic surgery. It's nothing but the desire to hold on to so-called beauty. Actually, it's very debatable how beautiful it is. But it's an attempt to preserve that. And it's an attempt to postpone the inevitable. So in beauty, there is the fear of old age. Yes, there is. In learning, there's the fear of other scholars. If I'm a scholar, I will say I'm a scientist, I found something, and then I will be afraid, oh, somebody will come along, another scientist, and will debunk my theory, and then, then I will not be the top scientist anymore. So in learning, there's the fear of other scholars. In the body, there is the fear of death, which is very universal. It's hardwired in us. Whether we like it or not, we don't want to die. That is, we cannot escape that fear. So then, he says, the final line says, everything in this world is attended with fear. Renunciation alone stands for fearlessness. So there is a common factor when you read this verse and go through all the types of fears that he enumerates. There is a common thread through all of them. What is at the root of fear? It is nothing but attachment. All these things that he mentions. Why are we afraid? Because of our attachment. So how does it work? I am afraid of being separated from that to which I am attached. So I have attachment for my wealth. My fear is I will be separated from my wealth. It will be taken away from me. I am attached to beauty. My fear is that I will lose that. And then the other way around. The fear of being united with what we dislike. I don't want to get a disease. I get the disease. I am afraid that I will get the disease. So it's the fear of losing what we like or getting what we dislike. So at the root of all fear, there is nothing but attachment. That is the common thread. Now the question could be asked, is it possible to become perfectly fearless? Yes, but it's not easy. An illumined soul can be perfectly fearless. There are many instances in our literature where, people have been, great souls have been in a position of losing their lives, and they are completely unperturbed. Swami Prabhupada tells a story I read recently in his reminiscences. He says they were traveling in the Himalayas, somewhere, some mountainous region, and it was a narrow path. There is a deep, a cliff beside the path, and there is a very fast river at the bottom. So they're just walking along this narrow path, a group of swamis. So suddenly there is an avalanche of rocks. They can hear the rumbling, and the boulders and the rocks are coming down. There is nowhere to go. It's just narrow path, and it's just so fast. So you have just, an instant to think. So Swami Prabhupada sees that, and he instinctively turns around, and he sees the Swami Atulananda with a beautiful smile. Like he understands this. That smile is like saying, I know exactly what's happening, and I'm okay with it. So seeing that for him is like giving a lecture, receiving a lot of teachings, just that smile at that time, in the face of death, just a beautiful smile. And then the rocks just missed them by inches. He could feel the wind on his head. So they ducked, and somehow they were spared. But that's the state of fearlessness. But who can reach that state? That there is no adrenaline. Even the biological reaction to a danger, even that is neutralized, and you are just, how is it possible? Naturally, our adrenaline will kick in, and we will become very agitated at the prospect of dying. How can you even cancel that process? and just be unperturbed. You have to be illumined. For them, it's possible. So, we have fear. It's a natural emotion. And even the great souls experience this. There's a story in Gandhi's life. He was a young lawyer, and he was traveling in South Africa. And so he was well-dressed, like a professional lawyer in a suit. But in South Africa, there was this segregation. So he was traveling first class, and then one of the passengers complained that, hey, here is an Indian person traveling first class. So the conductor came and said to Gandhi that, no, you have to leave, you have to go to third class. Gandhi said, no, I have paid for a first class ticket. There's no reason why I shouldn't be here. And they said, no, if you don't go on your own, we will remove you from the train. So they end up removing him from the train. And he spends the whole night at that station in the cold, and he was feeling angry and humiliated and afraid. What did he do? He's 24 years old. Well, that was a pivotal point in his life. He started the fight against the system. So you see, he could have reacted very differently. I'm afraid. I become bitter and afraid, and I don't do anything. Get on with my life. Instead of that, he turned that fear into a meaningful fight. So he started fighting the system that had done that to him. There is a statue in that station. Modi went there. So it became like a very important point in Gandhi's life. So even these great souls, they may experience fear, but they overcome it. Now, there's a saying of Sri Ramakrishna. Our Bengali devotees will know it. Lajja grina bhoy tin thakte noy, which means shame, fear, and hatred. These three, if you want to be spiritual, you should give up these three. You cannot be spiritual and have these three: shame, hatred, and fear. So there's an incident in Holy Mother's life where the ladies had become a little noisy. They were shouting in the house, and it could be heard all over the house. And there were monks, they may be meditating or whatever, I don't know. But anyways, Holy Mother was not pleased. He scolded them. He said, you are not supposed to be noisy. Especially in those days, ladies were supposed to be quiet. So it wouldn't apply today. But Holy Mother said, you are not supposed to be noisy like this. And he scolded. So one of these devotees, she argued with Mother. She quoted Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna says, no hatred, no fear, because Holy Mother used lajja, shame. So lajja means modesty, shame. It has many variations in the meaning. So this devotee says, well, Sri Ramakrishna said, you cannot be spiritual if you have lajja. And you're telling us to have lajja, this modesty. Sri Ramakrishna was against it. He said, no, these three cannot be there. So that was the argument. Now, Holy Mother's answer is very interesting. She says, no, that only applies to those who are immersed in God. If your mind is all the time in God, then you will not have these three. You are free from these three. But, it's interesting that even the great souls or the avatars, they will show these three because it's like a lila they're playing, like actors. So according to the circumstances and the need, they will show shame or fear or anger. Swami Prabhupada tells a nice story about anger. So when he joined the monastery, Swami Premananda was the novice master, and he was a strict novice master. He would scold the brahmacharis right and left. So once he saw Swami Premananda scolding a brahmachari severely, and immediately he thought, this holy man, he loses his temper. So this thought crossed his mind. So right then, just at that time, Swami Premananda turns around and smiles, and then continues to scold. He smiles to Swami Prabhavananda, who just thought this. He understood. He's just showing this. He's not. You cannot be mad and then smile and continue. It's not possible. If you're mad, you're mad. And if you smile, you smile. But you cannot do both. But he did it. Why? Because he's not really mad, but he's making a show. So that would be, you may think, oh, holy man, showing hatred. No, he's just making a show. But they act this way. There's another incident in Holy Mother's life. So once she had a toothache, and Swami Nirakarananda, he felt that Mother should be relieved. She's suffering so much. So he called a dentist. And it was known that Mother was afraid of doctors and dentists. So he called dentist. The idea was he will come to Mother's house and he will pull out the tooth, and that will be it. So when the dentist comes, the Mother is nowhere to be found. So the Swami Nirakarananda called for Mother. He said to Golapma, please find Mother. So Golapma came back with the message, Mother will not see the dentist. And Swami Nirakarananda tried to plead with her that, please, she's in pain. Try to convince her. Golapma said, no, we should respect Mother's wish. She's very adamant. She will not see the dentist. So Swami Nirakarananda had no choice. He had to pay the dentist and tell him to leave and apologize. Then they started looking for Holy Mother. She's nowhere to be found. Finally, they found her under the bed. She was hiding. So avatars, they're just playing. It's fear, but is she really afraid? It's just like playing a game. In Rama's life also, there is this instance when Sita is abducted and he looks for her in the forest, and he's asking the trees and the birds and the animals, where is Sita? And he's lamenting. So somebody asks Rama, what is this? You are Vishnu, and you are lamenting like an ordinary person. Don't you remember your true nature? And Rama says, yes, you're right. I know I'm Vishnu, but where is Sita? So he continues to lament. So that is the divine play, in these great souls. They appear to show fear and all these other emotions. So what did Holy Mother reply when these devotees said, well, Sri Ramakrishna said we should not be afraid, we should not have fear or shame or anything like that. Holy Mother says, Lajja, Grina, Bhoy, Tin Thakte Hoy. Let all these three remain: shame, hatred, and fear. Just the opposite of Sri Ramakrishna. Well, Sri Ramakrishna is saying A, Holy Mother is saying B. So who's right? It's an interesting incident here. So Mother also says, Jara che bhoy, tar hoy joy. Those who are afraid, they are successful. If you are afraid, you will be successful. Now, Swamiji is telling us to face our fears. And here, Holy Mother is telling us, be afraid. So, it's confusing. I think both are right. There is a place for fear in our lives, but there is a need to be fearless at the same time. So sometimes you need these emotions like fear, like shame, like hatred even. If you see injustice, then that indignation is a kind of hatred that you want to stand up and fight that injustice. So it's not exactly hatred, but you need some feeling to be able to face what is unjust. If you find you have a weakness, you can hate your weakness and say, I want to change. I hate this weakness. I want to change myself. So like that, fear also. If you are afraid of a car crash, you will drive carefully. That's not a bad thing. So there are reckless drivers who endanger their own lives and the lives of others. So in that sense, it's good to be a little afraid that, okay, I have to drive carefully. So there is a place for that. At the same time, Swamiji says, to fight our fears. He says, fear is one of the greatest obstacles to human progress, spiritually and materially. So I think the key is not to go beyond the fear that is essential, that is part of our survival mechanism. Because if we give way to fear, what happens? It brings its friends. Worry, anxiety. So these are friends of fear. The more we fear, it develops into worry. And the habit of worrying about the future, worrying about this, worrying about that, we become anxious. And if we become anxious, then we don't need any reason. You see, when you worry, you say, I worry about this, I worry about that. When you're anxious, you don't need anything. You just are anxious. Many people don't know why they're anxious. They're just anxious. So it starts with fear. We're afraid. Then that becomes a habit. We start worrying all the time. Then that worry gives rise to fear, to anxiety. Then we don't know why we are there. Why am I anxious? I don't know. I have to go to a psychiatrist to tell me why am I anxious, because I don't know. I have lost track of my own psyche. So I think that is the danger. If we become too afraid and worry too much, it will drain our energy. There is no positive benefit from worrying and being anxious. There is nothing. You can say that when you're afraid, it protects you from something bad happening to you. But when you worry, there's absolutely no benefit. When you are anxious, there's absolutely no benefit. So I think that is what Swamiji means when he says, be fearless. There will be fear. If you see a snake, you will jump, because through our evolution, we have learned that snake bite is no good for me. So if I see a snake or a scorpion, I will jump instinctively. I will be afraid. But if I am shown a picture of a snake, should I jump? It's just a picture. So that means it's too much fear. I'm shown a picture of a snake and I jump. Why? There's no danger there. So, there's a place for fear, but also there's a need to be fearless in our spiritual life. Now we come to troubles. Swamiji mentioned three things. He said, we should fight our fears, our troubles, and our ignorance. So troubles are the things that happen to us. You see, fears, most of the time, they never materialize. We are afraid of so many things, and they never come to pass most of the time. But troubles means, yes, they are real. We are not imagining. Troubles means we have to go through them. We have to go through them. So even the saints, they have to endure troubles. And I think Swamiji is a good example. Throughout his life, he had to face so many troubles. He had health troubles, insomnia, diabetes, asthma, so many things. By the end of his life, he had all kinds of diseases. Like you had to ask, what you don't have? Because he had everything. He had worked so hard, his body was broken completely. Then he had financial troubles when his father passed away. He had been too generous, and now the family was in difficulty. To the extent that he had to tell his mother, I'm eating out, because he knew there was not enough food for everybody in the house. It was not true. He was not eating out, he was just fasting. To that extent, he had to face financial troubles. Then legal troubles. His aunt ousted the family out of the ancestral property and sued them. And that lawsuit Swamiji had to fight for 14 years. And you know when it was settled? 28th of June, 1902. He passed away 4th of July. Just a few days before passing away, he finally settled that lawsuit and finished the problem. Imagine, all through his life, 14 years, he went through this. Now he's a sannyasi, he's a brahmagnani. He could have said, this is Maya. You know, he would have said to his brother, you deal with it, I don't have anything to do with this. No, he went through it. He faced the trouble and went through it. And practically to the end of his life, he had to fight this lawsuit. Then, remember when he came to the West? The Christian missionaries, they found this guy is bad for us, for our business, because he's telling so many truths of the wrong things they're doing in India. So they started spreading rumors about Swamiji and so many bad things. He had to face all that. And there's no way to prove that he is genuine. It is his word against theirs. So he had to go through that. Then he comes back to India from the West. He is misunderstood by his own brother disciples, not to speak of the Christian missionaries. Even his own brother disciples misunderstand him. And when he said he wanted to start the Ramakrishna mission, they said, well, Sri Ramakrishna never told us this. He said, all your energy and time should be spent on spiritual practice, trying to realize God. And you're telling us to start these things. This is your own idea. Swami Yogananda was the first one to oppose this, telling that we think this is your own idea, not Sri Ramakrishna's. So Swamiji had to really try very hard to make them understand that Sri Ramakrishna was using him as an instrument, really. It was not his own agenda. Finally, they understood, and Swami Yogananda became the vice president of the mission. But it wasn't so easy. There's another incident with Swami Vijnanananda. So Swamiji, he went to India and he was accompanied by his female disciples, and they were moving around in India. So that must have been a shock for the other Swamis, his Guru Bhais. So Swami Vijnananda noticed this, and once he caught Swamiji alone, and he asked him, Sri Ramakrishna told us to stay away from women. That's as simple as that. And you are mixing with them freely, traveling around. You brought them to India, and this is against Sri Ramakrishna's teachings. So Swamiji's face became red. And immediately Swami Vijnanananda regretted. He immediately thought, oh, what have I said to Swamiji? But it was too late. He had already spoken. So Swamiji became very grave. And he told him that, look, do you think you have understood what Sri Ramakrishna stood for and his message? With your little intellect, you think you have understood everything about Sri Ramakrishna? Sri Ramakrishna taught me differently. Why talk? Why taught? He showed me, Swamiji says. He didn't teach me, he showed me. And then he said, Sri Ramakrishna has obliterated the distinction between genders in me, between female and male. There is no gender in the Atman. There is no gender in the self. Sri Ramakrishna has removed that distinction from me, Swamiji is telling. So you can imagine Vijnanananda is like in awe. Then he says, what Sri Ramakrishna taught you, it's fine. You follow that. I am following what he taught me. So you follow what Sri Ramakrishna taught you. It's a very, very interesting incident. And then Swamiji says, do you think Sri Ramakrishna came only to save men? What about women? He came for the whole society. He is not going to pick, I'll choose this gender or this race. No. Sri Ramakrishna came for everybody. So that Swami Vijnananda was an eye-opener for him. when he could extract from Swamiji exactly how he felt and how he thought. So these are the trouble monkeys. The point is, if all these great souls have to go through these troubles, what to speak of us when we are ourselves creating most of our troubles? They are not creating their troubles. We are manufacturing our own troubles most of the time. And that brings us to the third point, ignorance, the third type of monkey. Swamiji says we have to fight our ignorance. Swamiji says, what we call mistakes or evil, we commit because we are weak. And we are weak because we are ignorant. So there is an evolution. From ignorance comes weakness, and from weakness comes mistakes or sin, they would call in Christianity. Swamiji says, the greatest sin is to think yourself weak. All power is within you. You can do anything and everything. So how to fight this monkey of ignorance? See, the problem is often the stress is on sin. And in Christianity, they will say, be a good Christian, don't do any sins. These are the sins and you should not commit them. But that is like saying, oh, you have indigestion, here is the medicine. And then the next day you'll have indigestion again, oh, here is the medicine. The solution is, why do I have indigestion? What am I eating that is causing the indigestion? Otherwise, the medicine is there, but it's not solving the problem. Every day you're getting the same problem. So to say, do not sin is the same problem. Yeah, okay, I'll try. And then tomorrow again, I do the same thing. So Swamiji says, the problem is not the weakness. The problem is not the sin. The problem is ignorance. So how to fight ignorance? If you get rid of ignorance, you naturally will become strong and you naturally will overcome all these mistakes. So the solution is to have a positive outlook, not to dwell on the negative. When we speak about doing sadhana, spiritual practice, we are focusing on the positive. When you do japa, meditation, what are you trying to do? You're trying to become stronger. You're trying to know yourself. If you know yourself, the ignorance is gone and the sins are gone. They all go away together. So Swamiji says, I am the resultant of all my past, both good and evil. I have committed many mistakes in my life, but mark you, I'm sure of this, that without every one of those mistakes, I should not be what I am today. So I am quite satisfied to have made them. I do not mean that you're to go home and willfully commit mistakes. Do not misunderstand me like that. But do not mope because of the mistakes you have committed. But know that in the end, all will come out straight. It cannot be otherwise, because goodness is our nature, purity is our nature, and that nature can never be destroyed. So that's the thing. How to fight these monkeys? How to fight ignorance? So the ignorance stands for all the mistakes that we make in our lives. Don't think about them. Don't dwell on them. Don't try to change them. It's gone. It's history. Then how to prevent them from happening in future? Don't think about them. Try to be strong. If you're strong, the weakness will go. If the weakness goes, you will not do wrong. So that is the positive attitude. You are not focusing on the negative. You are not focusing on not doing something. You are taking the positive approach. You are trying to do something. And then the other things drop off naturally. And we have to give it time. Sometimes God wants to keep us fighting. The Divine Mother wants to keep us in ignorance a little longer. What can we do? We can only try. And when mother thinks, okay, I think this guy had enough of it, she takes pity and says, okay, now off you go. You're free. There's a nice story I read once. It's a Zen story. There was a master who had many disciples, and one of the disciples had the duty of bringing water to the hermitage. So he had a long pole with 2 buckets at each end, and several times a day he will get water from the well and bring it to the hermitage. So one of the buckets had a leak and was losing water on the way. So by the time the disciple reached the hermitage, half of the water was gone. The other bucket was okay. So this continued for some time, and then the leaky bucket got depressed and spoke to the disciple and said, look, I'm no good. Huh? The other bucket is carrying all the water. I only carry half of it. Just throw me away. What's the point of using me? And the disciple said, no, why are you talking like that? Don't say it like that. There's a purpose. Everything has a purpose in this universe. And the bucket continued, no, I'm no good. I know I'm not good. So then the disciple took the bucket outside and said, look, this is the footpath we go every day from the well to the hermitage. So do you see all those wildflowers along the way? I said, yes. This is all the water you have been dropping. All the seeds have sprouted thanks to the water that you have been dropping. So you think it is meaningless. You think you're no good. But God knows better. There is a purpose why we are still here. There's a purpose why we are still ignorant. So there's no point in fighting God's providence. God knows what is better for us. So the wise thing to do is to surrender to God and keep trying. But there is no benefit from worrying and obsessing about these things. Try your best, and God knows better. And another thing is that the spiritual seekers, they are more sensitive than the average person. So what we think is big mistakes and sin and all that, for the average person, they would probably think it's fine. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with being selfish. For some people, we may think, oh, I was selfish. For them, it's, hey, it's fine. This is the survival of the fittest. There's a nice story. I don't know, we shouldn't get too late, but I'm wrapping up. Then we can have some questions and answers. But there's a nice story about this. There was a Shiva temple, and it was late at night, and there was a severe storm. So a Brahmin was passing by the temple, and he took refuge. He went inside, and he just lay down beside the Shiva lingam. No, sorry. I'm getting confused. There was what do you call? There's a name for it. Kabuliwala. They were Kabuliwala. They're supposed to be rough guys. I think they're in Calcutta. Historically, they were in Calcutta, Kabuliwalas. I don't know. Yeah, originally, but right, exactly. So originally from Kabul. So they're supposed to be rough guys, So this Kabuliwala was walking by the temple, and this storm started pouring down, and so he took shelter in the temple, and with his boots on the Shiva lingam, he fell asleep. So he's laying his feet on the Shiva lingam, snoring comfortably. So at the same time, after a few minutes, a Brahmin, a pious Brahmin, is in the same situation. He's taking shelter in the temple. And in the darkness, he, with his foot, he hardly touched the Shiva lingam. And then Shiva appeared before him with the trident, ready to kill him. And the Brahmin says, Lord, I'm sorry, I didn't see in the darkness. I'm so sorry, please forgive me. And the Lord says, no, I'm going to kill you. And then the Brahmin says, but look at the Kabuliwala, he's sleeping with his boots on you. And Shiva says, what can I do? He doesn't believe in me. So So, the moral of the story is the spiritual seeker is more sensitive. We feel like, oh, we have done something very wrong. For the worldly person, it's fine. They seem to be doing very well and thriving. Swamiji said, the cow never tells a lie and the stone never steals. But nevertheless, the cow remains a cow and the stone a stone. A human being steals and tells lies, and again, it is the human being that becomes a god. This is a very interesting teaching, because we have a class in St. Louis, and sometimes this issue comes up that some people say that, oh, my pet is better than many human beings. My dog is so loving. They're so innocent. They're so faithful. And it's true. It's true. But still, they are a dog. But they have that capacity to have this relationship, this bonding with human beings. You can't deny the fact that, they are very faithful, very loving, but they're stuck in a dog's body. So human beings, you cannot trust them as much as a dog, but they become a saint. A human being can become a saint. So there is a big difference there. We are not, our goal is not to become like a dog or a cat or a cow, but they do have certain traits we can learn from them, actually. They have some inbuilt noble qualities. But the greatness of the human being is that it can become a devil or it can become a god. So shall we stop here? I could continue, but it will get late. So if you have any questions, if you don't have questions, I will continue. So that's the threat. So once somebody asked me, Nirakarananda ji, that I have started my meditation and my sadhana, and my mind is more restless, and I have more, like my desires are stronger. So how come? How is it possible? I am meditating, doing japa, trying to live a spiritual life, and instead of getting peace, I get more restlessness. I get more desire for enjoyment. What is this? It's a common complaint, actually, especially with beginners. Swami Atishananda Ji gave a very nice analogy. He said, suppose you have a piece of land and it's lying fallow, and then one day you decide to cultivate it. Let me grow something. Let me grow, I don't know, corn. So you till the land and you sow the corn, and then you water it and you wait, and the corn will come and grow. Then what happens after some weeks, you begin to see lots of weeds and a little corn here and there. And you say, what is this? I planted corn and all these weeds are sprouting. So that is what happens when you start meditating. There is all these bad seeds in the mind, but they are lying dormant because you're not bothering them. Now, you are planting the seed of the name of God, but you are watering everything. You cannot say, no, I will water this seed and not that seed. You have to water everything. So they sprout, and then you have to take them out. So it's a beautiful analogy. When you take to spiritual life in right earnest, this kind of things happen. So you have, with great patience, you have to weed out the bad, undesirable plants and keep the corn. Slowly it will become better and better. So that's the thing. We have many things in our minds we don't even know we have them. When you take to spiritual life, they are revealed to us. Then, oh, I have this problem. Okay. The first step is to know we have that problem. Otherwise, we go through life blissfully unaware that we have a problem. or we have a weakness, or we have a limitation. So whatever we do, Swamiji says, in the end, it is our very nature. Purity and freedom is our nature. We are bound to achieve that. And we have the words of the Gita also. Nehabhikramana-shusti pratyavaya na vidyate. That means in this yoga, there is no loss of any attempt. Sometimes you may feel, well, I'm meditating, but I'm really falling asleep. Or I'm meditating, but I'm really just all over the place. Even the fact that you're trying means something. It has some value. Even however sleepy you may feel, however restless you may feel, the fact that you are forcing yourself to try has some value. And God is watching. So the Gita says, nothing is wasted in this yoga. Every little effort that we make it will help us in some way. And the other thing he says is, there is no contrary result. If you do this yoga, you will get a good result, not a bad result. So like we said earlier, sometimes it may look as if we are trying to control the mind and the mind becomes more uncontrollable. This is just a temporary phase. Sri Krishna says, there is no contrary result. If you try to control your mind will be controlled. At times it may appear is the contrary, but no. The nature of yoga is such that if you do the right thing, you will get the right result. And no effort will be wasted. And then Sri Krishna says, in the same verse, even a little of this yoga will save us from the great fear, the fear of death, perishing. We are eternal. The more we practice this yoga, the more aware we will be that we are free, that we are eternal beings. So I think we can end here. It is almost 8:30. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om peace, peace, peace be unto all. So now, Swapna, dinner? Okay. Very good.
Tomorrow at 10 o'clock,